A collapsing economy is inevitable. The question is, how will it all unfold? So today we will discuss the end of the financial system. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's get into the deep intel today. I want to once again continue on with something I do cover regularly, and that is real levels of inflation. As we look at this example with the beef and veal prices, the chart begins at the year 2000 for those who can't see, up until the present day, and lo and behold, another record. It is consistently beating the record. That shouldn't surprise anyone, and this is just one example. Beef and veal prices, you see that with all different types of commodities constantly increasing. What is the difference between this beef or this veal or this chicken or this egg or what have you between that which existed 10, 20, 30, 100 years ago, and we have basically the same commodities is what I'm getting at. It is just the amount of dollars required to purchase them. This is pretty easy. That is in fact the true definition of inflation. Another example of this is what we are seeing in Manhattan specifically. Almost 99% of the Manhattan rentals are currently occupied, according to a new market report, a vacancy rate of 1%. Just to give you some perspective here, back at the peak of the financial crisis, where we had the subprime mortgages and what have you, we saw the vacancy rate in Florida jump to an extremely high 20%. So this is quite at the opposite end of the spectrum right here in Manhattan today. Look at this. At the same time, rents are at their highest. Manhattan dwellers pay on average $4,000 a month. You're looking at record rates right now of rent in areas like Manhattan. A lot of people are renting. Why? They can't buy. Buying these houses in Manhattan becomes completely impossible simply because of the astronomical rates. This is partly due to the fact that interest rates are so low, so many people were able to buy up these homes. Then when they reach a certain point, people are only able to rent. The vacancy rates are quite low at this point, giving rise to increasing rents. So when you have this type of situation, you are basically putting more and more of a burden on people and their pocketbooks. This cannot be sustained. Remember that. You can't have prices rising forever and ever. It doesn't work like that. There has never been a case in which prices rise forever. There are always crashes. There are setbacks. There are corrections. There are all sorts of things that occur, but inevitably things will go back beyond where they were and then revert back to the mean. It always gets worse than where it should, and it always goes far better than it should, and then begins to revert back to the mean. This is a historical thing that happens over and over and over again. Let's look at this here. This happens to be out of Canada, but really it applies to all around the world. Canadian home prices will rise modestly this year, giving some additional support to the economy that remains sensitive to the housing market activity. But what about debt? See, you only focus, if you're in the mainstream media, if you're part of the political class, if you are somehow interconnected in with the financial industry, you like to keep your blinders on. Because when you have the blinders on, everything looks rosy. Even when things are crashing down, you can always point to those one or two indicators which will always look so bright. But that's not the real case. That's not what this channel is about. That's not what any of my work is about. It's about telling the truth, because ultimately the truth is what we need right now in these very dark times. As an average, the home prices doubled over the past decade. Borrowers piled on debt, lifting the household debt to income ratio at a record high of, believe it or not, 163%. That is unbelievably incredibly high. You impossibly cannot withstand the 163% debt to income ratio. Think of that like the debt to GDP ratio of these different countries. In my previous video, or perhaps you've seen other videos of mine, where we go into nations like Greece experiencing a debt problem that is similar to the Canadian household. We're looking at the same level of debt, except there's nobody to bail out the individual. And when you reach these peak moments, some call it the tipping point, there is always a correction, there's always a collapse, there is a crisis, and it cannot be averted. In my book, I spoke about this. What I'm noting here is the Money GPS hot point. These appear a few times in the book where I really make a strong point. Bernanke noted that people know that inflation erodes the real value of the government's debt, and therefore it is in the interest of the government to create some inflation. And as I said right here, he says that inflation will remain in our system as long as these central banks exist. So we know the direction, we know the trajectory of all of this debt of the financial system. So guess what? It doesn't take much intelligence here to figure out what's going to happen. I could tell you right now, it isn't looking pretty for the future. Let's move on to this here as we look at the real situation. Forget about debt to income, forget about the debt to GDP, forget about all these other statistics, the beef prices, the inflation. Stop looking at all that. Look at the poverty. The hunger cliff, this is right at the bottom there, more than 56 million meals lost and counting. They can't even afford to give the meals to the poor who need it. That's how bad the situation has become. This happens to be in New York City, applies to many of the big cities around the US, and in fact in the Western world, where they're supposedly recovering, but it is anything but the sort. You can read on with this for yourself. What we see is that many more people are on the food stamp program, a bigger and bigger burden. They actually cut back on the food stamps, and what happened? Many people just went hungry. So it didn't necessarily get any better. That's the skewed statistics that you read in the mainstream media. Not going to happen here on this channel. You see food stamps that actually declined. They started to peak out at around 47 million, and then they went down a bit. What happened there? Were people finding jobs? Were people able to get a new source of food? In fact, no. They simply went hungry. They simply had to fend for themselves in some other way. But they definitely were short on food. That's what these statistics right here out of the Food Bank of New York City talking about. A very, very serious situation. Poverty is very, very bad in the world at this moment. What about Obamacare? How wonderful is this? I mean, free healthcare for everyone? That sounds wonderful. I mean, while you're at it, get your Obama phone, because it's a free phone. Why not take it? And then let them do whatever they want. And in fact, they're going to do that already. They already are. What about this? You're looking at the multidimensional insurance data analytics system. What's that? Well, basically, they had this area to keep your information, if you're on Obamacare, what they call the perpetual central repository. Let me repeat that for a second. Perpetual central repository. That means that they can keep your data, every single piece of data, because of course with Obamacare, your banking account is all linked up with that, all your personal data, everything about you, all the most important critical data is kept with this Obamacare system and kept perpetually. This has nothing to do with the NSA and all their criminal activities, which they've been brought to light on, but of course nobody gets in trouble. The bad person is apparently Edward Snowden in this case. But what we have here is all agencies. Let's give it up and just understand the truth that it is in fact all agencies are keeping your data. They're all sharing the data even when they're not allowed to do so. It is a pretty obvious thing at this point right now. Everywhere you go, your license plate, they're taking pictures of it. They're keeping that in a database, perhaps to data mine. Who knows what they're doing with it? They're constantly scanning us, and they are monitoring us for what? I'll leave that up to you, but let's move on here. Now, we know that the government doesn't have any fraudulent statistics. We know that we could trust every single thing that they say. So, in fact, it has been 90 days that the Treasury had their debt frozen at 18 trillion. That's not billion, that's not million. That's $18 trillion and change, give or take there. Now, you as an individual, it would be pretty difficult not to spend money, the average individual will say, not to spend a dime or not to save a dime for 90 days. You have the exact same amount of money for 90 days straight. That's 3 months. Well, the government of the US was able to do that. That is an amazing feat, and we should congratulate them for that feat, not spending a single dime for 3 whole months. Congratulations. Let's move on to the next article. Feds can't verify $2.8 billion in Obamacare subsidies. Wait a second now. The Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, they said they released this audit finding that the agency did not have an internal system to ensure that subsidies went to the right enrollees or in the correct amounts. That's right. So they basically misplaced $3 billion because of Obamacare. Now think about that for a second, how terrible this system is. It's not even working since the very beginning, and now we find out that $3 billion is somehow unaccounted for. This is outrageous what's happening here. This reminds me of what happened one day prior to the September 11th attacks, when they admitted that trillions of dollars simply went missing. Well, you know what? They cannot continue to do this without eventually hitting a peak and it all comes tumbling down. Yes, they're going to have the solution prepared on the other end. I do believe that. I don't think we're necessarily going to win in this regard, but it's all going to come down. It's all going to crash down. There are a million different reasons. I keep bringing it up. People think that this collapse is just going to happen overnight. That's not the way it works. It is a systematic and really what I call the dominoes falling. And that's what we're seeing today. That's what we have right now. But one of those reasons is undoubtedly the automation systems that are being developed. This is just one example out of CNBC. Barclays says it's pursuing technology that could see users talk to a robot computer system to make money transfers. An artificial intelligence system similar to the Siri from Apple's iPhone be used so that people will be able to talk to their device and receive the information they ask for. Slowly but surely, every single job is being automated, becoming redundant, and being eliminated. Yes, there are some jobs that are being shipped overseas. That is definitely one way. But ultimately, the goal is that humanity will suffer because there'll be no purpose for them. If you think that your job is necessarily getting easier because of automation and computers and technology, in some cases, absolutely. But in a lot of cases, it's really just displacing humanity in general. This is what worries me. I hope it does for you as well. These are huge concerns of mine. I'd always like to know your thoughts. Please leave me comments down below. Constantly trying to get back to people through the comment system, through the emails. I'm one of these people out there that does reply to you. I'm working on my website. Got tons of data coming through the Money GPS. This is a very, very important YouTube channel. I want to keep this going for as long as I possibly can. There is no way that anyone out there is bringing the data that I am over here at the Money GPS. We have so much to cover. I'm not just a channel that covers the news. I am a channel that is becoming, slowly but surely, becoming the financial education that is missing from individuals as we were growing up. That's missing there. Well, I'm going to be the one to bring out this data. I'm developing an e-course for free, and that's available at the Money GPS at the main the main channel page that I have on YouTube. You can go and see the e-course for yourself. Lots of information there, daily videos that I try to bring out, and so much more, I assure you. Stay tuned. Last but not least, if you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up, and I know that you will like my book, The Money GPS, because it's even more informative, and you can actually flip through the book at the Amazon page for this. You can go there. They have a look inside feature. You can flip through the book and see if you like it for yourself. Take care.